Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Turnpike Music Garage, a show that gets under the hood of live music. And if you've been following us, last time we started into a little bit of a discussion about bands, original bands, and what it takes to become successful. And we have Brian, who talked about the band commitment side of it. We have Maria here, Manes from Mindz-I Entertainment. Again, we chained her to the chair, by the way, to talk about once you have a band who's committed, getting them out and successful, and what are the obstacles that you face. And we all kind of felt, and Billy too, from local Rock Gods TV, that we didn't really cover enough detail with that. There's a lot more to what it takes to be successful as a band and originally act. And so we're going to just keep on with that discussion. So you were quite passionate about the fact that we didn't cover it enough, Maria. So I'm going to go to you first.
I think that a big part of my job is once they get to that point, and once you get to the point where you're touring and you're beginning to feel success, is keeping them focused. That's a very big thing, because they're there, they're almost there, they're right at that cusp, and that's when you'll see a lot of bands either make it or die off, because that's when the internal fighting starts to happen. That's when you start to see the struggle for power in the band. And it's really a very difficult thing. That's when my job, which is depending, if they're good and it's a good product, it's easy to sell. It's easy to get them on opening acts. It's easy to get them shows. People like them. They want to come out and see them. But at this point, it's when my job gets harder, because not only do I have to deal with the outside influences, I have to deal with what's going on internally in the band and the struggles that are going on within the band. So from a band member's standpoint, you get to that point and all of a sudden they're not really rock stars yet, but they're legends in their own minds. Yeah. And really, truthfully, it's the truth. And it's like, okay, you need to bring it back, because you're here, you're not here. You still have to work. We're not done.
Yeah, you need somebody to keep you grounded. I mean, the point is, when you start sniffing a little bit of success, there are the things that come out of the woodwork. Do you have a Yoko syndrome happening? Is something going to cause tension from outside the band that maybe that wasn't causing tension before? Why is it causing tension? And having somebody as a manager, booker, whatnot, to give you an outside perspective to keep you grounded is great. The other thing that's really good about that is you need somebody to pick up the slack now. And your job now is, you've done some work, you've achieved some success. Your job now is to go out there and be the best that you can be.
Not screw it up, basically.
Not screw it up. Continue working at it. Now you really need somebody who's going to make the phone calls for you, who's going to beat down the doors, who's going to deal with the A&R people.
Do the advanced work.
Do the advanced work. Take care of all the little business things that really kept you from really delving full in to being a great musician or being a great artist.
So you're saying that takes a load off of you?
Yes, it does.
As you're doing as a band?
Yeah, and it's a two-way street too, because a lot of times, if your band is successful enough and they start dealing with, whether it's record label people or publishing people or stuff like that, these are business people, and they don't want to be dealing with the guy who's like, "Yeah, dude, my stuff's great," and they don't want to be. They want to be dealing with the business. They want to be dealing with somebody who understands, like, okay, I'm talking to you about what is this band going to deliver. You have to be able to tell me what that band can deliver. Not, dude, my stuff is great. Don't worry about it. It's like, no, they work really hard. You need somebody who sees it from the outside also, who goes, I have a band, they work really hard, they're really dedicated, they're only going to grow, this is the growth. They can basically give you a verbal graph chart of how this band is going to go. And they need to be able to communicate that to a business person. And a lot of times, there are musicians who can do it because they understand it, but a lot of times they need somebody who's that person to do it. Yeah,
but the business person they're communicating that to is not, a guy that's the head of IBM or a guy that's running.
You'd be surprised.
Really? The problem, one of the big problems with the record industry now is you have a lot of people who are not really knowledgeable about music in the sense of, like, back in the day, like, if you want to go all the way back to, like, when the Beatles were discovered. The Beatles, the guy who gave the okay to EMI to sign the Beatles was the producer. Producer was a lot more. Producers would actually go out and find talent. He would find a talent. He'd sit there and say, like, you know what, these guys are really, really good. I mean, even more recently, a band like Van Halen. Van Halen was discovered by Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
Right.
Gene Simmons went and produced 2 tracks with him and shopped them around. Okay, so you actually had people who were musicians or who understood music or had some job creating music, and you think of all the classic names, whether it's the guy from Atlantic Records who died recently, or Sergio Mendes from A&M Records. These were all people who had either been musicians or producers or whatnot, and they knew what it means to create art and music.
Right.
Now you're getting guys with MBAs who are coming out of business schools,
right.
and they're like, you know what though, I like to stay up late and party. I've always liked going to the party. I have a business degree. I understand business, but I like music too because I listen to it. And they know how to play the radio.
Yeah.
And that's what they're looking for. But they're still they're number crunchers, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's great that they love music, but they're not going to know as much about what's really good and deep and what isn't.
Right.
They're numbers guys.
It's what feeds that cookie cutter.
So as a band, it's even a harder obstacle for you without help.
Yeah.
To get through these guys, and that's where.
The best way to describe
for you too?
a management company is I act as the buffer between the band and the outside world. So somebody will come to me, whether it's a TV show that wants to have them on, or it's a venue that wants to talk to them, or it's a label that wants to open a discussion with them. It goes through me, and then I filter it down to them. My job is to keep them as focused on creating music and keeping their sound going, keeping that momentum, having them feed off that drive of we're almost there, we've got this, we can make it, and make the business end of it as easy as it possibly can be for them.
To me, management was always Cerebus. The dogs at the gates of hell. It's like you're the artist. You're cocooned in your little world, and you're just trying to create the music as best you can. At that point, you're supposedly so good at what you're doing. You're just trying to be better at it.
Right.
And what you want is you want that management. And I used to joke about this. I used to have a manager when I was in band, and I used to say like, this guy was the junkyard dog, but you want to be pointing him away from you, and he's the filter that everybody has to go through to get to you. Yeah. And he's going to be the person who's going to understand, like, I got to weed this out, I got to weed this out, I got to weed this out, because that's in the best interest of my band. Because they're there to protect the band too.
Right.
That's what people don't realize about management. They're not there to drive. They're not slave drivers. They're not there trying to hurt you. They're trying to help insulate you so that way and protect you so that way you can continue becoming better at what you do.
Well, I've done a lot of projects in my life, and one of the things that I kind of lived by as running a project with a team, like a band, is to keep them in the right direction and you just clear obstacles out of their way to keep them going forward. So now with that and with the competition we talked about before about the cookie cutter manufactured bands, and you've got MBAs that like music making decisions, okay, what do you do? What do you do to get them to consider more seriously an up-and-coming band?
You have to be different. You have to be.
Are you sure?
Good. You have to be good.
But you can be good.
Yeah.
You could be phenomenal. You're not going to impress Mr. Cookie Cutter in his MBA suit.
Well, no.
You have to. They are looking at it from a very business standpoint. Mm-hmm. They are looking at it strictly dollars.
But aren't they
How
also?
do I market this?
Just jump in real quick. Aren't they also looking at it from a path of least resistance too? There's a whole
Absolutely.
There's a whole mama's
here's the
milk
thing, too.
thing that I don't want to stray too far from what I know is going to work because I don't want to get in trouble.
But see, there's an aspect too that's like what is the easy sell now, and because of the nature of what the music industry's become now, bands aren't signed necessarily to sell CDs anymore.
No.
Bands are signed because what movies can I get their music in?
Right.
That's true.
What
How to
advertisements?
market them after.
Video games.
Yeah.
The video game business
Exactly.
is huge for music.
Like there's artists. There's a singer, Ingrid Michaelson, who got huge out of New York because she happened to get a song on a TV commercial.
Right.
I mean, and she sold the most independent records based off of that. So it's not necessarily like we're going to get this artist out there and they're going to sell the most records and then everything's going to be hunky-dory after that. It's like this artist has something where we can actually
Market
market it and they're going to sell themselves.
Right.
Now the other thing too is a lot of people, and this is where the sad side of it is, people like bands that are ready to go, bands that have already made their record. So for instance, it's not about, okay, we have this great band, we just need you to sign off and get us a producer and get us in the studio and spend thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to make a record anymore. It's like, no, we have a record ready to go. It might need to be remixed or remastered, but that's minimal.
Right.
And it's out there. And that band also is regionally a big draw. A band like Dave Matthews is an example of that. A guy who did really well. Another band like that is a band like Dispatch.
We talked about that actually offline before, about how they got their following and how they got people to take notice of them. They did it without agents, without all that.
Well, they brought in agents after.
Well, after the fact, but this kind of goes like Plan B, I guess.
Well,
you on the college campuses? That was one of the things you were talking about.
Like in the case of Dave Matthews,
that's how he made his
way.
way.
And he also, I remember, he played his college base was so-called Tobacco Road. You know, UNC, Duke. You have all these major universities with student populations of 50,000 to 100,000 students within less than hours drives to each other, and you're playing this whole circuit every night. Now, if you're going, let's say your average college major university has 50,000 students. If you're playing 5 of these colleges on a regular basis, and you have only 150 fans at every college, multiply that by 5. Yeah. Now you have 750.
And then they tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people, and it goes from there.
Yeah. And also, if these colleges are close together too, if you always have a certain core fans that will cross over. Another guy like that was our local boy John Mayer. Right. He was touring up and down the East Coast solo, and he had people who would follow him around. Yeah. And now he's huge. So I mean that's a good thing. But it's being willing to do the legwork. And
that's actually also demonstrates that you're willing to do the legwork without. So when they're ready to come to somebody like you can just say, all right, now I know I've got a product.
Well, it shows me they're serious.
Yeah,
it shows me that they're serious and that they're dedicated and they're ready to really work. It definitely makes my job much easier because there's a lot less struggle between management and the artist. It's not, as a management company, I think a very big misconception about management companies is that we tell them creatively what to do. No, that's not what we do. I mean, I will give them my opinion if I think that there's just something that's not working because I spend a lot of time with my bands. I spend a lot of time getting to know them and their sound. So if I'm at a sound check and I know something's wrong, I'm like, no, something's wrong. But I think that there's a big misconception of, well, management companies are trying to control us and the sound that we're putting out. That's not our job. Our job is to take your sound and to get it to that next level. Yeah. And I think that that's a big misconception and a part of why people are so hesitant to bring in a management company. And you have that, they're corporate and they're this and they're that and they're gonna take our rights away and they're gonna take our copyrights. I just have a fun question real before I want to just cut you off real quick, and you can come back. Have you ever worked for bands you just don't like their music? Honestly,
yes.
No. If I have to do this, and if I have to sit in a rehearsal room for hours upon hours upon hours, I am fortunate enough that I can be a little selective about what I choose to do.
Well,
that's double-sided. I can tell you that when I first hooked up with the Full Blast Movement and Deuce Bug, which is a hip hop artist in the scene. Hip hop was not my thing. I was the Knitting Factory girl. Yeah. I was the underground, hard rock, hardcore. That was my thing. Mm-hmm. So hip hop was not new, but it was new to me. But I loved the music. I loved the direction that he was headed. So while it was not my particular genre of music that you would find on in my car, it is now. So, there's the ability as a person, you also have to be willing to grow.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I don't want to. Guys, so you were going to say.
I was just going to say, the thing that people have to realize about management companies, the reason why you bring in a management company is because they have access to so many more
resources
that you're not going to have, that you're going to be doing one at a time, just cold calling clubs. They already have those contacts.
We already have the relationship.
Or with labels or publishing or whatnot. And the other thing about the contact with the thing about management too is you go find the management people who go seek you out like you because they like that genre of music. Now some people are very diverse, some people are very focused on what they like. Doesn't mean that either one is bad or good.
Right.
So let me ask you this question: did we get closer to?
I think we're a little closer.
A little closer. We're gonna have to do 4 or 5 more episodes. Have we had enough chips in the cameras to do 4 or 5 more episodes? Anyway. I want to thank Brian Karp and Maria Manes and Billy Spencer for being here with me today. Welcome to the garage. Thanks for being here yourselves. I hope it was informative, interesting, and fun. I had fun. I hope you guys did too. Look for us next time, and thanks for being here.